Welcome to our AIF featured talk, Bringing Canadian Culture into the ESL Classroom, Connecting Students with Communities in the Context of Remote Learning. I'm very pleased to introduce the researchers of this exciting project, including Professor Hee-Jin Sung, who will be presenting with me today, Professor Olga McEnina, and myself, Professor Jacqueline Ng. We are all from the Department of Languages, Literatures, and Linguistics. To begin, we would like to share some information of our teaching and research context. With the Academic Innovation Fund that we received, we worked collaboratively to redevelop a fundamental Gen Ed course, Thinking About Contemporary Canada, in the ESL program. The course is designed to help ESL students from diverse backgrounds build content knowledge on Canadian language, culture, and identity, and develop academic literacy skills through discussions of different academic genres. We realized that remote learning has become the norm and challenge for both teaching and learning these days. So we would like to share some of our teaching practice with you today. The presentation that we are going to give is going to discuss the effectiveness and values of our multimodal activities and assignments in engaging and empowering students in the learning process, and finally achieving academic success. The first major assignment that we would like to share is called the Identity Text Project. Identity texts are sociocultural artifacts created in three major spaces in which students can invest their identities. First, the narrative space enables students to tell their stories that provide cultural insights or describe their transformation in identity that involves impacts of their family, culture, and peers. Second, reflective space empowers students to critically reflect on their struggles, power dynamics, and negotiations of their identification process. Third, the creative space encourages students to create identity texts that can be produced in multiple ways, including written, spoken, visual, musical, digital, and/or multimodal forms. We are happy to share some examples of students' most favorite identity text pieces with you. The first example is a naming practice task. Based on a course reading, students discussed the significance of naming practice through a digital creation of an acrostic poetry. The picture on the right here on the screen is one of the amazing poetries produced by the students. Regardless of their English names that they have been using in the course, I was surprised to find that many of my students chose to use their cultural name given by their parents or their grandparents in this activity. And some of them even used their first language to explain the meaning of their name. And international students reflected on this naming practice by saying, "I feel homesick and I miss my family when I was asked to explain the meaning of my name in class and worked on this interesting poetry. I start loving my name, culture, and family more." The second part of this identity text is a language portrait, which is adapted from a course reading to motivate students to reflect on their linguistic, cultural, and transnational identities. The language portrait on our left showcases the language resources, such as the student's first language, Vietnamese, her second language, English, and other languages, including French and Chinese skills, as well as her cultural features, such as the traditional cultural costume, the national flag on it, and her cultural name that the student shared in this identity text project. In her reflection, the student expressed this: "I love seeing how my native and new identities integrate and evolve in the language portraits. This produces a new self of me." Towards the end of the term, students presented their identity text projects in their desirable formats. The infographic poster on the screen here is an outline of the identity text projects of a student who narrated her story of transnationalism from Syria to Canada, from a desperate war zone to a peaceful new country. and from an initial refugee identity to a more accepting Canadian identity. This student was invited to present her powerful identity text project at the Undergraduate Research Fair of York University in 2021 and was acknowledged by a wide audience. The student shared her thoughts in a reflective written task by saying this: I truly like the identity text project because it helps me dig deeper into my roots and reflects on my experience as a newcomer in Canada. This project inspires and reminds me that I am not forgetting my home country, but I'm also proud of my Canadian identity. From what we have seen, we believe that the Identity Text project brings valuable pedagogical outcomes in the three spaces that we have discussed. In the narrative space, the project connects the past and the present of students when they share their cultural heritage and narrates their unique stories. In the relative space, it connects intercultural groups when students reflect on their linguistic repertoire and exchange their cultural experiences with peers. In the creative space, it maximizes available resources and opportunities to ensure that learning can be happening in a meaningful context, and students can become the designers and owners in their learning process. Next, I'd like to present another major assignment integrated with multimodalities and EE components in the course. As the course focuses on the topic pertaining to contemporary Canada and the needs to provide ample opportunities for interaction and reflective discussion with knowledgeable representatives of a wide community, it prioritizes the EE component that can enhance students' academic literacies and foster intercultural competence through interacting with scholars or researchers in the field, to expand knowledge of the course themes and concepts through participating in a discussion with experts, and to practice critical thinking and inquiry research skills through reflecting on the learning experience of students. The first EE activity provides students with the socio-historical context of founding nations in Canada. While students were learning about the history and presence of Indigenous communities, they were invited to participate in the virtual field trip to the Woodland Cultural Center to learn more about residential schools in Canada. The field trip addressed the calls to actions by Truth and Reconciliation Commission, TRC, of Canada, which highlights that educators are responsible for developing course curricula in which Indigenous knowledge is appropriately incorporated in consultation with Indigenous peoples. In addition to the virtual field trip, we organized webinars to provide students with a chance to reflect on the course materials while conversing with the guest speakers. We had a webinar per course theme listed here. In the preparation for the webinar, students read articles written by the guest speaker and engaged in discussion of the key ideas of the reading. They also collaborated in groups or in pairs to come up with insightful questions for the guest speaker. During the webinar Q&A sessions, students exchanged their knowledge and perspectives on relevant topics pertaining to anti-racism strategies and voices of immigrants, racialized and minoritized communities. Each webinar was followed by a multimedia block reflective assignment.
The multimedia blog reflection assignment is designed to help students connect theory and practice of learning and enable students to express their voices while reflecting on the insights gained from participating in the EE activities and exchanging feedback on each other's blogs. Students are encouraged to implement multimodal tools to convey their ideas. The following guideline is given for students to consider in writing their multimedia blog reflection. Students are encouraged to create 1-2 academic paragraphs and respond to the following questions. What have you learned by participating in this experiential learning activity? What was particularly important and useful? How did the theme and content of the learning activity connect to the topics and concepts that have been covered in the reading and listening materials for this course? The feedback that students provided for the EE components of the course has been very positive. Students' comments from the anonymous survey really highlight that webinars and field trip have contributed to the students' active engagement with the course and stimulated their critical thinking. Students were able to implement theoretical knowledge gained from the course materials to the practice of discussing contemporary issues of Canada. Now, I'm going to illustrate how redesigned research inquiry project helped the students further develop academic literacy skills and achieve the course outcomes. The research inquiry project aims to foster students' in-depth engagement and their development of essential academic literacy skills. Through process-oriented research assignments, students are expected to do literary research, summarize and synthesize the literature with important issues related to contemporary Canada, and disseminate the research progress and analysis. Now, I'm going to elaborate the final research step, student conference presentations, and share students' reflections on their engagement in the conference. In this student conference, students are expected to actively exchange intellectual perspectives and participate in collaborative learning beyond the classroom level, broaden their horizons of scholarly engagement with the audience from a larger academic community, and facilitate their development of confident and competent presentation skills. Based on students' preliminary literature review and research proposal in this 3-day cross-section student conference, which was held in March 2021, each student was assigned to give a 5-minute presentation in their panel session. Each panel was grouped with 4 to 5 students based on their research topic and themes, and were given 30 minutes in total for their panel presentation, including the Q&A session at the end. The predominant themes and topics in students' presentations include socio-political issues around Canadian languages and culture and Canada's Multiculturalism Act, social integration experiences of immigrants, equity and inclusion of racialized and minoritized communities in Canada, and contemporary Canadian identities, which were highly reflective of the course content. In their reflections, many students mentioned that they gained intellectual growth and developed essential academic skills such as research skills, critical thinking, academic presentation, time management, and teamwork skills. In their reflection, it was also clear that students enhanced the collaboration through ample opportunities to communicate with peers for their successful outcomes in academic tasks. As exemplified, this student conference served as a powerful pedagogical space where students became the main agent of their own learning by disseminating their own literary analysis and exchanging their perspectives based on what they've learned from their research. To sum up, as illustrated, the multimodal practice experiential education, integrated learning opportunities, and student-focused professional conference, and this redesigned ESL 1450 course really help the students grow intellectually and personally in the context of remote learning. These pedagogical opportunities enable the students to actively engage in meaningful and relevant academic dialogues that relate to their academic and social life, which in turn help the students develop strong interpersonal relationships and also establish social and academic identities. As such, we can conclude that our innovative, collaborative, and inclusive curricular initiatives to bring Canadian diverse culture into the ESL classroom by connecting students with communities really contributed to empowering students linguistically, culturally, and intellectually in the new learning space. Here is the list of our references. If you have any questions, please do not hesitate to reach out to any one of us. Thank you.